In the Montsorel mansion salon, where the air was heavy with the scent of wax and unspoken betrayals, the Duc de Montsorel stood poised between calculation and unease. The gilded mirrors reflected his florid countenance, but no mirror could capture the turmoil within his mind. The arrival of his son, the Marquis de Montsorel, had interrupted his delicate negotiations with the detective St. Charles, and now the Duke faced a new challenge, navigating the ambitions and affections of a son whose very existence was a reminder of past deceptions. The Marquis, youthful and ardent, stood with a mixture of deference and defiance, his eyes fixed on his father as the conversation turned to matters of love and lineage. The Duke's voice was firm, his words weighted with paternal authority. If Monsieur de Fresques is a gentleman, and the Princess d'Argos decidedly prefers him to my son, the Marquis must withdraw his suit. The Marquis's face flushed with protest, his voice rising with passion. But, father, I am in love with Inez. The Duke turned to St. Charles, his tone curt. You may go, sir. St. Charles bowed, his sharp eyes gleaming with calculation as he retreated. He takes no interest in the proposed marriage of his son, he thought. He is incapable of feeling jealous of his wife. There is something very serious in these circumstances. I am either a ruined man or my fortune is made. With a final glance at the Duke, he slipped from the room, his mind already weaving plans to exploit the Montsorel family secrets. Alone with his son, the Duke's demeanor softened, but his words carried a warning. To marry a woman who does not love you is a mistake which I shall never allow you to commit, Albert. The Marquis's voice was earnest, tinged with youthful confidence. But there is nothing that indicates that Inez will reject me, and, in any case, once she is my wife, it will be my object to win her love, and I believe, without vanity, that I shall succeed. The Duke's lips tightened, his patience fraying. Allow me to tell you, my son, that your barrack-room ideas are quite out of place here. The Marquis pressed on, undeterred. On any other subject, your words would be law to me, but every era has a different art of love. I beg of you to hasten my marriage. Inez has all the pliability of an only daughter, and the readiness with which she accepts the advances of a mere adventurer ought to rouse your anxiety. Really, the coldness with which you receive me this morning amazes me. Putting aside my love for Inez, could I do better? I shall be, like you, a Spanish grandee, and, more than that, a prince. Would that annoy you, father? The Duke's face darkened, his thoughts churning with suppressed anger. The blood of his mother shows itself all the time. He thought. Oh. Louise has known well my tender spot. Aloud, he said, his voice stern, recollect, sir, that there is no rank higher than the glorious title, Duc de Montsorel. The Montsorel mansion salon, with its gilded opulence and stifling air of intrigue, seemed to tighten around its occupants as Joseph's voice broke the tense silence. Their graces the Duchesse de Christoval and the Princess d'Argos, he announced, his tone deferential but his eyes flickering with the wariness of one who knew the household secrets. The Duchesse de Montsorel's composure faltered, a fleeting shadow crossing her face. How excessively awkward! She thought, her mind racing to the implications of the unexpected visit. The Duke, ever the strategist, turned to his son, the Marquis, his voice low and commanding. Do not go, leave all to me. They are trifling with us. The doors parted, and the Duchesse de Christoval entered, her regal bearing softened by a calculated warmth, followed by her daughter, Inez, the Princess d'Argos, whose youthful beauty was tempered by a quiet reserve. The Duchesse de Montsorel rose to greet them, her smile practiced but strained. Ah! Madam, it is extremely kind of you thus to anticipate my visit to you, she said, her voice smooth as silk. The Duchesse de Christoval inclined her head, her tone gracious. I come in this way that there may be no formality between us. The Duchesse de Montsorel's gaze shifted to Inez, her words careful but pointed. Have you read my letter? Inez's expression was serene, her voice measured. One of your maids has just handed it to me. The Duchesse de Montsorel's heart quickened, her thoughts racing. It is evident that Raoul is also coming, she realized, her mind grappling with the potential consequences of his arrival. She masked her unease with a nod, her eyes darting briefly to the Duke, who was already engaging the Duchesse de Christoval. The Duke led the Duchesse de Christoval to a seat, his voice warm but laced with intent. I hope we see in this informal visit the beginning of a family intimacy. Pray do not exaggerate the importance of a civility, which I look upon as a pleasure, the Duchesse de Christoval replied, her smile polite but non-committal. The Marquis, his youthful order barely restrained, turned to Inez, his voice tinged with reproach. You are seriously afraid, madam, I perceive, of encouraging my hopes. Did I not suffer sufficiently yesterday? The princess did not notice me, even by a look. Inez's eyes met his, her tone gentle but firm. I didn't expect the pleasure of meeting you again so soon, sir. I thought you were on duty. I am glad to have an opportunity of explaining that I never saw you till the moment I left the ballroom, and this lady, she gestured toward the Duchesse de Montsorel, must be the excuse of my inattention. The Marquis's lips curved into a faint smile, his voice softening. You have two excuses, mademoiselle, and I thank you for mentioning only one, my mother. The Duke interjected, his tone smooth but edged with purpose. His reproaches spring only from his modesty, mademoiselle. Albert is under the impression that Monsieur de Fresques can give him ground for anxiety. At his age, passion is a fairy that makes trifles appear vast. But neither yourself nor your mother, mademoiselle, can attach any serious importance to the claims of a young man whose title is problematical and who is so studiously silent about his family. The Duchesse de Montsorel leaned toward the Duchesse de Christoval, her voice low and probing. And are you also ignorant of the place where he was born? I am not intimate enough with him to ask for such information, the Duchesse de Christoval replied, her tone neutral but guarded. The Duke's eyes gleamed with a hint of triumph. There are 3 of us here who would be well pleased to have it. You alone, ladies, would be discreet, for discretion is a virtue the possession of which profits only those who require it in others. The Duchesse de Montsorel's voice was sharp, a subtle rebuke. As for me, I do not believe that curiosity is always blameless. The Marquis, undeterred, pressed his point, his voice tinged with urgency. Is mine then ill-timed? And may I not inquire of Madame whether the Fresques of Aragon are extinct or not? The Duchesse de Christoval turned to the Duke, her tone measured. Both of us have known at Madrid the old commander, who was last of his line. He died, of course, without issue, the Duke added, his voice firm. Inez's eyes flickered with a trace of defiance. But there exists a branch of the family at Naples. The Marquis countered swiftly, his knowledge precise. Surely you are aware, mademoiselle, that your cousins, the House of Medina Coeli, have succeeded to it. You are right, the Duchesse de Christoval conceded. There are no de Fresques in existence. The Duchesse de Montsorel seized the moment, her voice calm but pointed. Well, if this young man has neither title nor family, he can be no dangerous rival to Albert. I do not know why you should be interested in him. The Duke's tone was sly, his words aimed to provoke. But there are a great many ladies interested in him. Inez's expression tightened, her voice steady but revealing a spark of insight. I begin to see your meaning. Indeed, the Marquis exclaimed, his jealousy flaring. Yes, Inez continued, her tone deliberate, this young man is not, perhaps, all he wishes to appear, but he is intelligent, well-educated, his sentiments are noble, he shows us the most chivalric respect, he speaks ill of no one. Evidently, he is acting the gentleman and exaggerates his role. The Duke's voice was dry, his skepticism clear. I believe he also exaggerates the amount of his fortune, but it is difficult at Paris to maintain that pretension for any length of time. The Duchesse de Montsorel shifted the conversation, her tone bright but calculated as she addressed the Duchesse de Christoval. I am told that you mean to give a series of brilliant entertainments. The Marquis, unwilling to let the subject drop, turned to Inez. Does Monsieur de Frescas speak Spanish? Just as well as we do, Inez replied, her voice even. The Duke's tone was sharp, a warning to his son. Say no more, Albert. Did you not hear that Monsieur de Frescas is a highly accomplished young man? The Duchesse de Christoval's expression grew thoughtful, her voice tinged with concern. He is really a very agreeable man, but if your doubts were well-founded, I confess, my dear Duke, I should be very sorry to receive any further visits from him. The Duchesse de Montsorel, her composure a mask for her inner turmoil, turned to the Duchesse de Christoval with a smile. You look as fresh today as you did yesterday. I really admire the way you stand the dissipations of society. The Duchesse de Christoval leaned toward Inez, her voice a whisper. My child, do not mention Monsieur de Frescas again. The subject annoys Madame de Montsorel. Inez's eyes flickered with surprise, her reply equally hushed. It did not annoy her yesterday. The salon, with its polished surfaces and hidden currents, seemed to pulse with the weight of unspoken truths. The Montsorels and Christovals, bound by civility but divided by suspicion, circled the enigma of Raoul de Frescas, whose shadowy presence threatened to disrupt their carefully constructed worlds. The Duchesse de Montsorel's heart pounded with the fear that her son might soon arrive, while the Duke's calculating gaze missed nothing, and the Marquis's jealousy simmered beneath his polished exterior. In this gilded cage, every word was a weapon, and every silence a strategy, as the players moved closer to a reckoning none could fully foresee. The Duke's smile was thin, his words probing. On the contrary, you have come just at the right moment. We were just speaking of your family and of the aged Commander de Frescas, whom Madame and myself were once well acquainted with. Raoul's expression remained composed, but his voice carried a hint of defiance. I am highly honored by the interest you take in me, but such an honor is generally enjoyed at the cost of some slight gossip. People can only gossip about those whom they know well, the Duke countered, his tone deceptively light. The Duchesse de Christoval leaned forward, her voice warm but insistent. And we would like to have the right of gossiping about you. It is my interest to keep myself in your good graces, Raoul replied, his words careful but unyielding. The Duchesse de Montsorel seized the moment, her voice soft but pointed. I know one way of doing so. What is that? Raoul asked, his eyes meeting hers. Remain the same mysterious personage you are at present, she said, her tone a subtle plea to maintain his silence. The Marquis, abandoning his pretense with the newspaper, rejoined the group, his voice dripping with scorn. Here is a strange thing, ladies. One of those foreigners who claim to be noblemen has been caught cheating at play at the Field Marshal's house. Inez's tone was cool, her eyes narrowing. Is that the great piece of news in which you have been absorbed? Raoul's voice was calm, but his words carried a sting. In these times, everyone seems to be a foreigner. The Marquis's gaze was cold, his words aimed to wound. It is not altogether the piece of news that set me thinking, but I was struck by the incredible readiness with which people receive at their houses those about whose antecedents they know positively nothing. The Duchesse de Montsorel's face flushed with indignation. Is he to be insulted in my house? She thought, her maternal instincts flaring. Raoul's response was swift, his tone sharp but controlled. If people distrust those whom they do not know, aren't they sometimes likely, at very short notice, to know rather too much about them? The Duke's voice cut through the tension, his tone admonishing. Albert, how can this news of yours interest us? Do we ever receive anyone without first learning what his family is? Raoul turned to the Duke, his voice steady. His Grace the Duke knows my family. The Duke's smile was magnanimous, his words carefully chosen. It is sufficient for me that you are found at Madame de Montsorel's house. We know what we owe to you too well to forget what you owe to us. The name de Frescas commands respect, and you represent it worthily. The Duchesse de Cristoval's voice was urgent, her maternal concern evident. Will you immediately announce who you are, if not for your own sake, at least out of consideration for your friends? Raoul's expression hardened, his voice resolute. I shall be extremely distressed if my presence here should occasion the slightest discussion, but as certain hints are as galling as the most direct charges, I suggest that we end this conversation, which is as unworthy of you as it is of me. Her Grace the Duchess did not, I am sure, invite me here to be cross-examined. I recognize in no one the right to ask a reason for the silence which I have decided to maintain. The Marquis's eyes flashed with contempt. And you leave us the right to interpret it. If I claim liberty of action, Raoul replied, his tone unyielding, it is not for the purpose of refusing the same to you. The Duke's voice was conciliatory, but his words carried a warning. You are a noble young man, you show the natural distinction which marks the gentleman. Do not be offended at the curiosity of the world, it is our only safeguard. Your sword cannot impose silence upon all idle talkers, and the world, while it treats becoming modesty with generosity, has no pity for ungrounded pretensions. Sir! Raoul exclaimed, his voice sharp with indignation. The Duchesse de Montsorel leaned close, her whisper urgent and anxious. Not a word about your childhood, leave Paris, and let me alone know where you are hidden. Your whole future depends on this. The Duke continued, his tone earnest but probing. I really wish to be your friend, in spite of the fact that you are the rival of my son. Give your confidence to a man who has that of his king. How can you be descended from the house of de Frescas, which is extinct? Raoul's gaze was steady, his voice defiant. Your Grace is too powerful to fail of protégés, and I am not so weak as to need a protector. The Duchesse de Cristoval's voice was firm, her maternal instincts overriding her earlier warmth. Sir, I am sure you will understand a mother's feeling that it would be unwise for her to receive many visits from you at the Christoval house. Inez's eyes met Raoul's, her voice trembling with hurt. A word would save us, and you keep silence. I perceive that there is something dearer to you than I am. Raoul's face softened, his voice low but fervent. Inez, I could hear anything excepting these reproaches. His thoughts churned with frustration. Oh, Vautrin! Why did you impose absolute silence upon me? He bowed farewell to the ladies, his movements graceful but heavy with resolve. To the Duchesse de Montsorel, he said, I leave my happiness in your charge. Do what I order, I will answer for the rest, she replied, her voice a quiet vow. Raoul turned to the Marquis, his tone formal but pointed. I am at your service, sir. The Marquis's voice was cold, his dismissal sharp. Goodbye, Monsieur Raoul. De Frescas, if you please, Raoul corrected, his eyes locking with the Marquis's. De Frescas, then, the Marquis retorted, his tone dripping with disdain. Raoul exited, his departure leaving a palpable void in the salon. The room, with its polished surfaces and hidden currents, seemed to hum with the aftermath of the confrontation. The Duchesse de Montsorel's heart pounded with fear for the young man she believed to be her son, while the Duke's calculating gaze masked his growing unease. The Marquis's jealousy simmered, and Inez's quiet hurt lingered in her eyes. The Duchesse de Cristoval, caught between propriety and sympathy, sensed the unravelling of delicate alliances. In the Montsorel mansion, where every word was a weapon and every silence a strategy, Raoul de Frescas had become a catalyst for truths that threatened to shatter the fragile facades of those within its walls. The Montsorel mansion salon, with its gilded mirrors and heavy damask curtains, seemed to pulse with the aftermath of Raoul de Fresquez's departure. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, and the polished surfaces of the room reflected the strained faces of those who remained. The Duchesse de Montsorel, her composure fraying at the edges, turned to the Duchesse de Christoval, her voice tinged with reproach. "You were very severe." The Duchesse de Christoval's expression was resolute, her tone firm but defensive. "You may not be aware, madam, that for the last 3 months this young man has danced attendance on my daughter wherever she went, and that his admission into society was brought about a little incautiously." The Duke's voice was sly, his words aimed to provoke. He might easily be taken for a prince in disguise. The Marquis, his jealousy barely restrained, countered with a sneer. "Is he not rather a nobody disguised as a prince?" The Duchesse de Montsorel's eyes flashed with indignation, her voice sharp. "Your father will tell you that such disguises are difficult to assume." Inez, her youthful defiance rising, turned to the Marquis, her voice steady but pointed. "A nobody, sir? We women can be attracted by one who is above us, never by him who is our inferior." The Duchesse de Christoval's tone was sharp, a mother's reprimand. "What are you talking about, Inez?" Inez's eyes gleamed with quiet rebellion. "It is of no consequence, mother. Either this young man is crazed, or these people are ungenerous."